Shut up and sit down.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fight for Liberty show. Tonight, we are joined by the chairwoman of the County Libertarian Party, two-time congressional candidate in the 34th District, and one of the candidates for chair of the LNC, Angela McArdle. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on.
All right. Well, so I usually start out by kind of getting an idea of kind of what brought you to libertarianism and kind of your path there. So I've noticed a lot of people, if you had libertarian friends before you joined the party, they're usually arguing with you, like, you're really a libertarian. You're like, no, I'm not. And then once you actually join the party, you spend all of your time arguing, no, I'm a real libertarian. So I'm curious, when did that switch happen? When did you figure out that you were actually a libertarian?
So there was a little bit of a lag in that switch for me, but I did go through that same experience. So I started referring to myself as a libertarian when I was a teenager. I met someone who we were just having a conversation about politics, and he was like, well, you don't really sound like a conservative. You sound like a libertarian. Because I had said, well, I'm a Republican, but, I don't care that much about the drug war. Like, I don't think my friends should go to jail for smoking weed. And I don't care that much about gay marriage. Like, shouldn't conservatives want gays to get married and be like conservative gays? And he said, well, you sound a little bit more like a libertarian. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I've heard of that word before. It still sounds conservative-y and like guns and stuff. So, okay, I'm a libertarian. But I didn't get active in the party until, many years later. And that's started to be told that I wasn't a libertarian. So I had the full experience.
So what made you actually get involved in the party itself?
Well, in 2013, Los Angeles, the city, had a proposed ban on food sharing in public places, which is a ban on feeding the homeless. And at the time, I was doing a lot of activism in Skid Row, doing outreach with the homeless community, food sharing, feeding them, doing pro bono legal work, and pro bono medical care as well. And so I was like, oh, this is outrageous, right? Mm-hmm. So I got involved with a group called Monday Night Mission at the time, and Food Not Bombs, which is known pretty well. And we worked on organizing a huge protest against this homeless feeding ban. And we did it in the city council person's office on Hollywood Boulevard at Vine Street, which is a huge, very popular tourist destination in Hollywood. It was wildly successful. We threw the whole thing together in about 9 days, and we had almost 800 people there, the media there, and it was a huge success. They tabled the motion. They said, we're not going to go forward with the ban. It was, there was so much public outcry. So I thought, ooh, this is kind of interesting. I think people want to get more involved in politics. Like, I had a win, and so, I did some more libertarian activism after that, and then started going to libertarian meetups and meeting actual libertarians. And, the rest is history. They convinced me to run for Congress, even though I said I didn't want to do it. And I thought of myself more as like an anarchist libertarian, not a policy wonk, not a candidate, but they took me and I ran, and I just got addicted. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. It's like the protest was great, but this time, I don't have to find anyone. They literally put a mic in front of me and asked me what I think about taxes. So I was like, whoa. I was like, well, I think we should get rid of them. And they were like, that's enough from you, little lady. Too late. I got my soundbite in. So
that's all you need. Yeah, I definitely have found, I'm still fairly young, but I did jump around careers a little bit pretty quickly, and politics by far is the best thing that I've ever done. It's so rewarding. Like every single day you're out there, talking to people, getting to learn about their lives, getting to figure out how what you're doing can help their lives. And yeah, I love it. I can't imagine going back to sales or marketing or anything like that, really,
I
ever.
agree.
So, you came in with kind of a rare experience for a libertarian then, if you kind of like you came in off of a win. Like we don't have very many of those.
Right. Well, and that was sort of my objection to running for office too. Like
Mhm.
I spoiled my win record, but
Right.
I, I found that I could make meaningful change outside of politics. Like I was involved in politics, but I was pressuring it in a grassroots way. I would
Mhm.
attend city council meetings, I would scream and throw a fit in front of their office and get public outcry, and it worked. So I thought, I should really be affecting politics and political outcomes from outside of the political sphere.
Mhm.
But I think being active as a libertarian, it's sort of similar because I'm pushing libertarian activism, but not within the two major parties. So I want to make meaningful political change, but I'm doing it in one of the most principled ways possible, which is not getting in, one of those swamps.
Mhm. Yeah, I dipped my toe into both of the duopoly parties in 2020. I worked with Tulsi Gabbard for about 6 months, and then I worked with Young Americans for Liberty. So they, forced me to work on some Republican campaigns, um, and I definitely, especially with Tulsi, I had just finished my own libertarian race for New York City Council. It was literally a week between election day and me being in New Hampshire working for Tulsi. And I was like, okay, maybe a real party, maybe people with media connections and money and all this stuff, maybe that'll be better. And I quickly discovered that working for Tulsi was worse than working for a libertarian, and that anyone with principles in either of those parties is going to get shunned. I had a lot of friends that worked for Rand Paul in 2016 that just had horror stories of what the Republican Party actually does to their people. And I was like, okay, I would rather be a 3%er with an L next to my name than an R, if those are my options. So let's keep moving and growing the Libertarian Party.
Same. I know so many people who volunteered on Rand Paul's campaign. They briefly jumped ship to go there and they come back with just horror stories about how horribly mismanaged it was and how
Oh.
awful and unpersonable the people running the campaigns were. And everyone
Mhm.
said the same thing about the volunteers, which was that the volunteers were great and they were nice people, but the people running the show who were really plugged into the GOP were a
Mhm.
nightmare. So it's really something to consider. We think that we have horror stories about the Gary Johnson campaign, but it pales in comparison to
Mhm.
hearing about how the GOP treats people. And the Democratic Party. When I ran for Congress in 2017, I got to know actually a lot of the other people who were running because there were over 20 of us running. And so it was some sideshow.
Oh
It was like
wow.
a circus. It was all over the news. It was just like a ridiculous thing.
Was it
And
a
so
special election?
it was a
Okay.
special election. Our congressional rep had been appointed to a state level position. And so we were all jumping to fill his seat. And they had sexual harassment allegations in their party. There were all kinds of, the Bernie bros, they're grabbing chicks, and
Oh
this
gosh.
person's there, she's laundering money in her campaign, and just calling everyone rapists and whores and cheaters and frauds. And I was like, well done.
Welcome to California. All right.
Yeah. It was culture. I was like, wow, your party is a cesspool of like, it's a den of iniquity. I don't understand.
Yeah, that's the one thing that has really been kind of angering me lately, and I'm trying to not let it actually anger me. But I've heard a lot of people, regardless of what their complaint is of the LP, say that they're leaving and they re-registered as either of the other two. And I've had a couple, like a number of people since like probably October say that, and especially after November when we lost so horribly, and in some states we lost ballot access, and that was a big thing for a lot of people. They worked their ass off to get ballot access and then just watched it go away in one election, and they're just like, nope, not building that back up again. So I understand some of it, but if their complaint was anything other than basically that, or just being burnt out, it blew my mind. It's like, oh, there's a bunch of racists in the party, so I'm going to go be a Democrat. And I was like, have you met Joe Biden or like seen anything he's ever said? Or it's like, oh, there's a bunch of like cancel culture lefties, so I'm going to go be a Republican. And I was like, y'all aren't any better on that one either. Like, come on. Like, where are you seeing that the duopoly is better in any of these situations?
Right. And once they get active in those other parties, they're going to find out that, guess what? Wokeism and progressivism has already infiltrated the GOP. You find it more at county and state level parties than you'll do at the national party, but it's there because they're desperate to relate to young people. So they have all kinds of weird cultural factions within their party. They're trying to appeal to people by abandoning GOP principles. And then, the neocons and traditional Republicans are screaming and fighting against it. And then you've got like weird, Trump furry MAGA freaks who are fighting the whole thing. And then the Republican Liberty Caucus is like reaching out to me going, we can still make it work. Come over. And I'm just like, no, like your problems are too deeply rooted. And then the Democrats, like, you don't even have a foothold. Like, you don't even have an inch over there. There's like a Facebook group, like Democratic Liberty Caucus or something. And I think there's like 2 people in it that post like twice a year. Like, and you can't find it anywhere else. Like, that's it. It's a dead Facebook group. Like, that's the extent of that little venture.
Yeah. I would love to see something, as many complaints and as much shit as I'll give the Liberty Caucus within Congress, they do something ish, and sometimes kind of sort of vote principle. I would love to see something similar come out of the Democratic Party, because there are some people over there that actually have principles and have voted some semi-libertarian in the past, and Rand and Thomas Massie have plenty of people on the other side of the aisle that they're able to work with on different issues. I would love to see something spring up over there in a similar vein of like anti-establishmentism that isn't the Squad.
Yeah, it would be great if they could help hold down the fort on civil liberties. Like, if we could just focus on anti-war and NSA spying,
right,
just that sort of stuff. But they usually, kind of cave on that stuff. They'll fight a little bit and then say, oh, I had to vote on it. It's just, they're all subject to political pressure,
right,
from the rest of their party. And, that's why I think their parties are so, unsavable. They're unsavable.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to an America that, I don't want a single party libertarian controlled America. That's not my dream. I want like a 6-party system that like works together the way that the government was originally intended, because I don't think we can ever get to the actual original intent of a no party system. I don't see people ever being able to just consider politicians as individuals again. I just don't see us rewiring people's brains that way. But having 5 or 6 options, I can see that being a legitimate thing in a couple of years, especially with ranked choice voting taking hold in plenty of these states. We'll see. We didn't do well this year, but down ballot, we had plenty of third-party victories, both within the LP. Green Party had a couple of victories, in like county and city elections. Working Families Party had a couple. There was third parties are coming back in a way that we haven't seen since Lincoln.
Yeah, there's another one I've been following called Movement for a People's Party. it's disenfranchised Bernie Bros. But I think it's interesting to follow because they have kind of their own version of populism going. And they seem to have pretty good party culture. They don't seem to have quite the level of infighting. So I like to follow those things and try to understand what's happening culturally in other
Yeah.
populist and grassroots movements.
Yeah, the People's Party gave me a little bit of hope, as well as the Weinstein brothers. I think it was the Unity Party or something like that that they attempted to do. I obviously wasn't thrilled with their presidential candidate that they nominated, because it was Dan Crenshaw, and he's kind of the worst.
Yeah.
But they picked Tulsi as the VP, so that was at least, somewhat in the right direction.
Yeah, that
but
was a weird
but
mix, right?
Crenshaw, yeah. I
Like,
mean, the thing is, these people, the people that started this and the people that voted in this are the what the other parties would consider, their gimme votes, the people that just like, oh yeah, that name looks right, it's got the right letter to it. The people that don't really pay attention, don't know the ins and outs of people, they are just going to show up at the polls and vote for the name that they know. And Dan Crenshaw was on SNL, and
yeah.
arguably minus the eye patch, he's one of the more attractive Republican congressmen. Tulsi's,
I like the eye patch. I think
I mean,
it's
yeah, plenty of people are into that too,
kind of cool.
like, so yeah, I think, it was a young, bipartisan, attractive two candidates. I think they had the right idea. I think it just shouldn't have been Crenshaw.
Yeah.
If
It was
replace
like
him with Amash, and Amash Gabbard is kind of my that's my team right
that
there.
would have been better. Otherwise, it was sort
Mhm.
of like, well, we have a pro-war guy and an anti-war girl, so maybe we'll put them together and cancel each other out. I don't know. But it was well-meaning. It was
Mhm. They could come back. They have 3.5 years to do something. Their problem was they did this in like September, and then attempted to talk third parties into giving up their ballot access to this Crenshaw Gabbard ticket that neither of them had even accepted to running on. And it was like, that's weird. But if they try to run a couple of like congressional candidates next year, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what comes out of all of this stuff. It does
Mhm.
show that it's not just, libertarians wailing about how people want another third party. People really do.
Yeah.
But we need to start capturing a few more of those votes and their enthusiasm instead of them going off to create something. Because I'm like, hello, yeah, we exist already.
Right.
So we need to figure out what's happening, that those people are like searching for another party and then feeling that they have to create their own. That doesn't sit well with me. I appreciate that they're doing it, but then at the same time, I'm like, why are you not checking us out?
Right. I think definitely, at least from what I've seen, a lot of the people that are doing this are, if not extremely left of center, at least somewhat left of center.
Yeah.
And we definitely have a history of not being so welcoming to people left of center.
Yeah.
I think we're getting past that. Finally, I think having people like Spike Cohen and Justin Amash and Joe Jorgensen, talking to both sides of the aisle equally, we've kind of we've started to move past that narrative. But I think there's a lot of years of history and way too many things for people to Google as it stands currently. I get into Twitter wars all the time about people being like, oh, all libertarians are white supremacist Nazis. And it's like, no, like, go look at Larry Sharp or Spike Cohen or Vermin Supreme and tell me that everyone in the Libertarian Party is super right wing. Like, try again.
It's really sad, but you're right. We have to combat that. Like at some point we got stuck with that reputation, but people also think that the Koch brothers pump billions of dollars into our party.
Right.
I'm like,
Where is that money? Please show me some of that.
we
I
would
would
be
love to have
winning,
it.
right? We would be winning everything if the Koch brothers pumped billions of dollars in. At some point, I just kind of blame public schools because this is not, these are not logical, rational assumptions people are making.
Yeah. It's definitely a culture of have an idea, then go find facts to back up that idea, and then solidify that idea in your head forever. And
Yeah.
I'm guilty of this too. I do it. I do it all the time. And luckily, I've surrounded myself with people that I trust that can kind of break through my like almost narcissistic like level of self assurance sometimes. But it's just our culture at this point. It's just like, oh, I believe this thing, and I'm going to go read a whole bunch of books that say this thing, and I'm going to only watch news that says this thing, and I'm only going to follow people on social media that agree with this thing. And because we now have access to everyone in the world and every single piece of content that anyone wants to put out, we can spend 24/7, 365 in the tiniest of echo chambers if that's what we want. I could listen to only like members of the Libertarian Party who fall like center to a little bit right, and just spend all of my time listening to just that in podcasts and pretend that that's all that exists in the world. And that's dangerous.
Yeah, that's like information overload. It's weird, right? Because we live sort of in a post-scarcity information world. There is so much that you can consume for free, like it's never ending. But instead of picking a little bit like it's a buffet, we just keep going back for like seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths with the only the things that we agree with the very most, which is not really a healthy way to look at the world or consume information or make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I try not to consume too much mainstream media. But I'm back at my parents' house for a little bit, and so almost every night, because they watch whatever show is on, like CBS or ABC, and then 11 o'clock the news comes on, and so I'm almost always sitting there for about 20 minutes watching mainstream media, and it's so awful. But I feel like it's necessary because I'll talk to my parents who watch almost exclusively mainstream media, and we live in two different worlds.
Yeah.
Like it's scary. And like my parents are, I was raised a conservative, not really a Republican. I would consider myself to have been like a small L libertarian for the most part. I realized pretty early on that, there was a difference between morals and laws, and that they shouldn't be the same thing. And so that was a pretty quick, slippery slope into libertarianism. And both of my parents voted for Gary Johnson. Both of my parents voted for Larry Sharp. And they still just like consume this media, and they don't like. My dad's a little bit more detached, but my mom, I'll talk to her about like COVID or other things like that, and she'll just rattle off some CNN talking point, and I'm like, no, that's not a real thing. Like the vaccine doesn't stop it from spreading. That's just not a true thing. It stops people from dying, yes. Doesn't stop it from spreading. That's a fact that we know about. Like, please stop lying to people.
Yeah, it's really hard, man. The way that I consume mainstream news is by seeing like articles posted by my progressive friends in social media. And I look at it and I'm like, what? Like, you don't really think that. This is absurd. But I realize that like they do really live in an echo chamber, and that's all they see all day long. And I try to have a little bit of compassion for these people, even though it's really aggravating to see all the misinformation, quote unquote, that they put out there regarding coronavirus. But wouldn't you think that it was apocalyptic and the end of the world if the only thing that you knew was like the media that you consumed said that everybody was dying, millions of deaths, and we were all doomed? I would probably be terrified too. So I try to keep it in perspective when I get really aggravated with these people.
Yeah. And instead, I worked in 14 states in 2020. I got to see it firsthand. And, I also had like close friends and family die of it, so I did see it firsthand. But, I saw plenty more recover from it, and plenty more people shake hands with 150 people a day and not ever catch it, even though we were getting tested like weekly. Somehow I've tested negative every time. I've taken like 4 tests now, and negative every time. I've been out canvassing basically all year. Like knocking on people's doors, handing them literature, with a mask on, depending on what state I was in. But like, if anyone should have caught it this year, it's me.
Right. It's just it's really telling that it's not that black and white. It's not that simple.
Right.
I've known people who've gotten sick from it, but I've traveled more this year than I had in several years past. I've been to conventions. I've been to all kinds of conferences. I touched a Sharpie marker that every person at the Libertarian National Convention had touched. And it was like patient zero marker. And I took it and I was like, oh, and I put it in my purse, like rock and roll, Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
Right. I am very thankful for my experiences in 2020 because I got to touch some states that I hadn't yet, including California. I finally got to check off California and swimming in the Pacific Ocean off of my bucket list this year. So that was a good time. And I cannot wait to go back to your state. It is so beautiful.
Thank you. We have the worst government maybe in the country. New York is trying to outcompete us, but at least we have beautiful weather. We have gorgeous weather. We have nice beaches as long as you don't go to like Venice where they're covered in trash and homeless people. But everywhere else, I swear, is really nice.
Yeah, I was a little bit north of you. I spent almost the entire time in the Bay Area. So I was in Oakland and then Cupertino and, went down to Santa something. I don't even remember which beach we went to. It was like an hour south of Cupertino, but stayed mostly up in the Bay Area. Drove across the Golden Gate once just to say that I had done it.
Right.
Couldn't see anything because it was so foggy. But that was, I think, cooler. I'm not mad about that. Like you can see the view in the movies. You know what it looks like. Like driving through that fog was cool. Like
it is. Yeah. No one realizes how foggy that part of California is. It's pretty wild. And it's like that consistently. It's like all the time.
Yeah, and I was also there in September, so like right at the worst, or like as the fires were starting to like teeter off, but just after the worst of it. So where I was canvassing, I was like at smoke shops mostly because I was petitioning for the flavored vape and tobacco ban. To remove that. So I was like camping out at smoke shops and people would park their car and go inside 20 minutes, come back out, and their car, like they have to like run the windshield wipers because their car is just covered in ash. And I was like, that was definitely something. Living on the East Coast, we don't experience that almost at all. Like large forest fires is not a thing that I've really ever seen. I had no idea what that was like.
Oh yeah, we literally have fire season in California. Like most of the state encounters it, and everybody politicizes it too. The federal government is to blame allegedly, but then it's the state government, but then it's environmentalists. But the reality is this thing just lights up on fire
Right.
every year, and it's sad and it sucks, and I wish it didn't. But we should come to terms with the fact that we just live in a flame state, and that. Just proceed with caution. Like don't move into the areas where houses go up in flames. I know a couple of people who've lost their homes. It's really sad, but it does happen every year in the same darn spot.
Right. Yeah, I just got a foot of snow today. If you don't want to deal with that shit, don't live there. I don't know why I still live here. I'd much rather be in California right now. It was not fun. I don't know why, but the city that I was out door dashing in today, it started snowing at about 11:30, and they decided to start plowing at about 1. And by then we had about 6 or 7 inches of snow, and it was like just awful. I got my car stuck in the middle of the road about 6 times today.
Wow,
it just shouldn't happen. Like.
Wow.
Like we live in upstate New York. Like we should be ready for this. Like they have the city and the county both own like dozens of plows. Like come on, it's not it's not even that big city. It's a tiny little city that owns like 6 plows. Like come on.
Yep, I visited upstate New York over the holidays, so I had the experience. I was like, oh, this is like I wouldn't have known how to even describe it or relate to it. Like I've seen snow. Like in California, we have snow on the mountains, but what you do is you drive 30 minutes and then you get snow chains put on your car, which I learned that you don't need. But in California, we all think that you need them for an inch of snow. So we pay someone to put snow chains on our car, and then we drive another 20 minutes up the mountain, and then we get out and we play in the snow and take selfies. And then you're like, I'm done. And then you drive back down the mountain and you pay for someone to take snow chains off your car. And then you go back to blissful Southern California. So even our weather, it's like we're like, okay, it's like 1 hour increment. Okay, I'll take, like 2 hours of snow this year.
Right. That would be awesome. I think that's what I miss. I got to spend my year in some of the worst, harshest climates possible. I literally started 2020 in northern New Hampshire, and then spent August in South Carolina, and then September in California. It wasn't great. I picked my timings all sorts of wrong.
That's a bad weather tour. That sounds like intentional punishment.
It really was. And then also, other than the short stop in South Carolina, I was in some of the worst possible states to have spent 2020 in. So I went from New York to Michigan to California with a little bit of Massachusetts in there. It was just awful governing the whole time. But it was awesome as a libertarian. Like, my job was to go out and talk to these people who live in super duopoly controlled states that are super pissed and hate their governor, hate their state government, like Republicans that are mad at everyone in California. I don't like even their state senators. Fuck those guys. They didn't do their job right. Like, we're still living in a communist hell zone. Like, get me out of here.
Yep.
I was blown away by how many people. I was 20 minutes outside of Oakland, like at a Walmart, and people walking out with MAGA hats on and like fuck Gavin Newsom t-shirts on, and petitioning was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. If I had a recall Newsom petition, I would have made like $1 million, because like people were so fired up, and I was not expecting that 10-15 minutes outside of a major blue zone in California. I knew that if you go north it was red, but I didn't realize that like all the suburbs were that heavily red as well.
I haven't yet encountered a protest or activism event in Southern California in 2020 or currently where there aren't people with signs that say Democrats against Newsom. Everyone hates him. He's done such a bad job that he is just universally reviled. And even the really far left people who are fully bought into Corona lockdown hysteria, they hate him too, because they say that he hasn't locked us down enough. So he's just got no one on his side. Like, no one's coming to his rescue. Everyone wants to see him recalled. It's good. It gives me a little bit of hope. A little bit.
I'm very much looking forward to, because that petition isn't circulating yet, is it?
The recall?
Yeah.
It has circulated and it's got 1.3 million signatures. And
oh, wow.
we need, I think we need 200,000 more. It was March, but I think they got an extension. So I don't know the date yet, but they're getting it. A lot of money has been pumped into it and people are enthusiastically signing it. Yeah, that's happening.
Awesome. I should hop on a plane, try to get a little bit more bread in from that. I love petitioning. It's so much fun. As we're talking about like politics being a great career, petitioning is probably my favorite thing to do within politics, because you're not tied to a campaign. You don't have nearly the strings attached to literally every single move that you make, and it pays so much better.
Oh yeah, well, fly on out. The Recall Newsom campaign is really activated, and I know that they're always looking for more volunteers. I'm on like a little Los Angeles County activism group chat with several people. It's the LA County Libertarian Party. It's the West Side Young Republicans. It's anarchists. It's a group of disenfranchised business owners, some of whom are Democrats, and the Recall Newsom. campaign. We all communicate about, lockdown stuff and work together to fight against it. It's just across the board. Everyone's fired up and working together. It's pretty fantastic.
So I heard that Newsom was finally kind of starting to loosen the grip a little bit. Is that actually going through, or was that kind of a fake?
Well, he said that he was releasing the statewide lockdown, so he just put us back to color-coded germ terror tiers. It's very much like the war on terror, but it's the war on germs. So he's lifted the lockdown, but he said it could go back at any moment. We're still all in purple tier, which I believe is the equivalent to George Bush's war on terror code orange. It's like red alert, basically. Red alert, but not red. I don't understand,
because that would be racist, probably.
Right. None of it makes any sense, because if you look at the curve of ICU hospitalizations or deaths or whatever curve you want to look at, and by the way, they're all kind of none of the data correlates to anything significant. But just recently we had like a big, spike, and ICU beds were full. By the way, they're always full this time of year. Just throwing that out there, because people get sick in the winter because they're huddling inside because it's cold, and so on and so forth. But you'll see that there was, quite a big spike in ICU hospitalizations and hospitals being maxed out. And then it just barely dropped a little bit. And so he was like, okay, now it's on the decline. We'll unlock you. But I'm like, excuse me, we were locked down all summer and the rates were not even close. Like, they're so much lower. So none of it, like his own arguments don't make any sense. I think he's just very nervous because he knows he's about to be recalled. And so he's trying to appease like the last few people who might not try to recall him.
I don't think it's going to work, though. I don't think anything he does at this point can really save him. I don't even think being Nancy Pelosi's nephew can save him at this point.
Well, and most of the California progressives hate Nancy Pelosi. So she still gets voted in. Right. She still gets voted in, but there's a really, like, by centrist Democrats and by people who are afraid that if they vote in someone else, something bad will happen. But none of them like her. And I think that they have finally switched. Like, she's not coming back. Like, and she's like 1,000 years old. Like, no offense, but she looks like a Skeksis out of the Dark Crystal. And she probably literally drinks essence. Like, I don't know how she.
No, she drinks ice cream.
Ice cream.
She lives off of ice cream.
Rumors about adrenochrome. I don't think she like literally drinks the blood of children, but whatever the legal version is, like, she pushes the boundaries. We know she does illegal stuff because she went and got her hair cut while the lockdown was off. So who knows what,
Right. Anything goes when you have that much power.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care how good she might have been back during the Kennedy administration. Like, she might have joined politics with the purest of intentions 180 years ago. But, that long in politics corrupts people.
It does. It's disturbing. I don't get why people would still vote for her. I mean, sure, I guess I could make all these arguments, but I'm like, why are you voting for this woman who's like, old enough to be your great-great-grandmother? Like, she was in politics before you were born. It's time to move on. Like, this is the problem. And everybody screams about term limits and things like that. But then they'll still vote for Nancy Pelosi because, heaven forbid someone else get in there and wreck the stuff you hate. There's no good reasoning to any of this.
No, I think my favorite campaign that I ran, I'll say it like that, was basically just like, don't vote for an incumbent. I have a lot of friends that, even though I hate this because people shouldn't do this, but my sister and friends and people, because they know that I'm involved in politics, they know that I study all of this, they'll like Facebook message me and be like, hey, what do you know about like this race? Who do you think I should vote for? And when my sister asks me, because she lives still within most of the same districts as my parents' house where we both grew up, I still pay attention to politics around here. And so I kind of sort of know the answer sometimes for her. But, I had friends from Michigan message me this year and be like, "Hey, who should I vote for?" I'm like, "I don't know, just not the incumbent. Just I don't give a shit. I do not care what party it is. What just vote in the primary, not the incumbent. Vote in the general, not the incumbent. Just not the incumbent. Can't go wrong."
And from a libertarian perspective, it's easier to knock out someone after their first term. So, you've got in California, we have all the time horrible, cringy progressives running against Nancy Pelosi. But I say vote for the horrible, cringy progressive because it's easier to knock them out and throw them off balance than Nancy Pelosi. It is going to take a very serious orchestrated attack to get rid of her. But other people, they get voted out all the time. So that's what makes sense to me.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that that's something that, me being in Brooklyn, you in LA, we have kind of similar politics. The Democratic machine is fucking ridiculous. So yeah, I have a very similar idea. And in New York, we have the Working Families Party. I don't know if you guys have that in California, but it's basically the only real third party that exists in New York State right now, as the Green Party and the Libertarian Party just got knocked off the ballot, as well as the Independence Party and I believe the Reform Party. It's basically there's just Republican, Democrat, conservative, and working families. Conservative and working families are usually just fusion, like mirror parties. They run whoever the Republican or the Democrat is. But in New York, within the city, they at least actually exist. And so, state senators or assemblymen that are from the city will wear a working families pin on their jacket, not a Democrat pin. And, they actually have an identity within the city that I like. And it's one of the reasons I encouraged anyone in New York State that was hell bent on voting for Joe Biden. I was like, please, for the love of God, do it on the Working Families Party line. Keep their ballot access, because just keep another line on the ballot. I don't care whose it is. Just let's have as many lines on the ballot as we can. And they actually blew the new limit out of the water. They needed 600,000. And so with them, it's really easy to pick out who has at least the most legitimate chance of knocking out the establishment person, because whoever Working Families Party is backing. They challenged Cuomo for governor pretty hard, and they actually invited his primary opponent to run on their line in the general, which is why Cuomo started hating third parties. What he just did to the Libertarian Party and the Green Party, it wasn't meant for us.
Right.
The Libertarian Party wants to play victim here. It was not meant for us at all. This has nothing to do with anything that we've done. It doesn't have anything to do with Larry Sharpe. This is all about Cynthia Nixon and the Working Families Party and how they almost took out Cuomo. He's mad, and he's failed at taking them out. So I think we can see a legitimate challenge of the Democratic establishment from another party in New York, other than ourselves. That'll be great to see. I hope that we can see that a little bit more and actually have other real third parties exist.
It's great because it's fracturing their support base. So, I'm not going to go vote for the Working Families Party, but I'm happy to help them destroy the Democratic Party.
Right.
I think it needs to happen. That is, and that it also, it allows people to have a paradigm shift that we want them to make. And for whatever reason, we haven't been doing it, Yep. And so if someone else can help us make that paradigm shift within their minds, that is going to make them more likely to be receptive to our messaging in the future, because they're out of this binary thinking where it's got to be Republican or Democrat.
Right. That's why, there's a constant argument, I think, within the LP of what do we do with the voters who aren't members? Is that actually, can we count them as libertarians? We look at, or I've heard the argument made a couple of times, and Dave Smith kind of alluded to it in his debate with Nick Sarwark about Gary Johnson got 3 million votes, but the party only grew by 150,000 people. So did he really get 3 million new libertarians? I think that as we kind of see this splintering of a support group, just the fact that they checked a box that wasn't an R or a T is a huge step for everyone. Even if it was voting for Joe Biden on the Working Families Party line, or Donald Trump on the Conservative Party line, or anyone on any line that wasn't an R or a D, you're taking a huge step away from that duopoly mentality. And I see that as a win. Even if they don't sign up as libertarians right away, they're on a path that's going to end somewhere better for them. Maybe it's not even our party, but it's somewhere that's better than the R's or the D's, for sure.
Yeah. And I don't think that we need to try really hard to vacuum up every single person who votes libertarian and make them a party member, because the reality is, like, most of them are not libertarians. And I
Right.
think that's okay. Like, we want people to vote for us who don't necessarily agree on every issue. Like, that's the idea.
Right.
We're not going to instantly convert everyone. But
Mhm.
if they like us enough to vote for us, even though they're not joining our party yet, we're doing something right, and we need to keep doing that.
Right. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that a lot of people focus a little bit too much on who's in the party, and the votes. We need a lot more voters before we can start picking and choosing who we're reaching out to in any form or fashion. And I think we're doing that. Like I said, with Joe and Spike, we saw a lot of reaching out to every single group possible. Spike Cohn was doing things with militias and BLM at the same time, and just doing all sorts of awesome stuff and trying to spread this liberty unity kind of idea. And I think we have a legitimate shot at at least not vacuuming up all of them, but vacuuming up more than we have in the past, by being a legitimate powerhouse that's going to change politics.
What I want to see happen in the future is I want us to do more principled messaging, but I want us to do a better job of getting it out there. And I think you really need to have a curated message, someone who's really experienced in it. I think
Yep.
Spike worked really hard. So I really appreciate
Yeah.
the work that he put in. And it was also very challenging to go and tour and do political speaking events when half the country is terrified to leave their homes.
Right.
And they also can't see half your face. It's so much harder to communicate. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
your facial expression is so important. So I'm hoping that we get someone who is really good at sharing our principles and who's willing to go after what I call the heretical left, not the far left, but there are people who are center left, like Tim Pool, and people who are into the intellectual dark web movement, who have been sort of cast out of the Democratic Party because they didn't buy
Right.
into wokeism. They're not totally economically on board with this yet, but they're like, this like identity politics stuff isn't right, and I don't think I'm not real crazy about cancel culture. That's the left that I think we need to be working with, and obviously people who have been kind of red pilled through the police brutality stuff.
Yep.
People who are receptive to our message, who are also interested in Black Lives Matter and like militia movements.
Yep.
Like, I think that if we get somebody who's willing to go there and isn't afraid to talk with them, that we're going to see a lot of success, because like the far left has really turned people off, and so has the Donald Trump like stage show. Like, people, it doesn't matter, sadly, it doesn't matter that he did like some really good like peace deals in the Middle East, in the United States, if people hate him because of his Twitter. Like, we just have to work with reality. And the reality is, like, he's not a likable person.
Yeah.
But we might as well use it to our advantage, right? So he's pissed off a lot of people in the GOP, and we should scoop up the liberty-minded ones, like, furry MAGA, capital capture the flag guys. Like, they're probably not going to join us, and that's okay. But
Yeah, I'm completely fine with not too many of them joining, because
yeah,
we have enough crazies. We don't need
do.
to scoop up. We need to scoop up the sane ones from the other two parties. That's what I think we have failed at a little bit as a party over the last couple of decades. Is like, we've gone after the far extremists and the radicals of both sides, and kind of ended up as a party full of crazy people for a little bit.
Yeah. Like, I want to grab the people who have lost faith in the electoral process, people who questioned the outcome of the election, and they're like, I don't like this, and I was just on board with the GOP because I thought we had to fight the left. The whole thing is a sham. I want to grab them. I
Mhm.
don't want to grab the people who are still holding on to QAnon thinking Donald Trump is going to be reinstalled as president in March.
Right.
They're not quite ripe for the picking yet. Hopefully we'll get there, but they're going to have to sort of like,
Mhm.
have a reality check moment.
Right.
It's sad for them.
Yeah. Something that happened this past week that really gave me some hope for just the country in general was Jimmy Dore hosted a member of a Michigan branch of the Boogaloo Boys on his show and got to basically actually have someone from the Libertarian Party explain why these people ran armed security for the BLM marches in Detroit this summer, like multiple times, and consistently fought with BLM, have fucking gay pride flags on their uniforms that they walk around in as this militia. Like they've always been super heavy left. Like the Libertarian Party was born on the left. We've always been pro LGBTQ. We've always been pro legalizing drugs. We've always been anti-war. We've always been pro peace. And we got to actually have a member of the party say that on a leftist show that millions of people watch. And that's awesome. It didn't
It's
have a
super
great reception, but it planted a seed. It had to have.
Well, it takes several interactions, right, to
Right.
change someone's mind.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden now someone's experiencing cognitive dissonance because they're thinking, no, I have these preconceived notions about these people.
Mhm.
I've already made my judgments and I've moved on, and now you're challenging them. So people are pissed off, but they're
Mhm.
pissed off because they're having an emotional reaction that doesn't jive, with what they had been conditioned to believe. So I think that's a great step. That's a step in the right direction. And
Yeah.
Jimmy Dore is one of those guys who, like, he's like, yeah, sure, he's on the left, but he's a
Mhm.
truth seeker. He's
Yeah.
not pushing like a progressive farcical agenda that he doesn't believe in. And
Mhm.
I really admire that when people want to pursue the truth.
Yeah. A lot of people throw shade at him. And, the first time, because he played the video that went viral of this gentleman speaking on the steps of the Michigan State House back in like August or something like that. Or I think that might have been the first one in June. He played that. And when he played it on his show about a week ago or so, he had no idea what he was talking about. Like he was like, "What are Boogaloo Boys?" And like had somebody Google it and look them up on Wikipedia while they were live. And he went into that a little bit clueless, and a lot of people threw shade. And I was like, okay, so he didn't know what they were, but he saw a video that was interesting. And the thing is, then he met the guy, had him on his show, had the guy explain himself. He dug into it while everyone was watching, and
Yeah.
that's okay. We
It's
can't hate him for not being 100% researched going into the interview.
But it's like journalistic integrity. He didn't
Mhm.
know, he tried to find out, and he did an honest, open interview. Like,
Right.
we don't see that on mainstream news anymore. I think
Mhm.
that's a valuable thing that for people to expose themselves to. Like, it's so weird to even think about like that this is an issue. This is what
Right.
it should be. This is how news should be.
Right. I mean, a lot of people could go about the same logic train and think that I should have done a whole bunch of research on you before having you on my show, figured out that you're somewhat right of me, and decided that I hate you because you're part of the Mises caucus and I'm part of the Pragmatic caucus and we shouldn't be friends. And that's not journalism, and that's
Right.
not podcasting. That's not what Jimmy does. That's not what I do. I get to know people because that's how we grow. That's how we learn about other people and learn how to understand their positions. And, I don't think that you and I are very different on much. I've followed you on Twitter for quite a while, and we seem to agree on almost most things.
Yeah. And I think that, like that's how the world works. It's
Mhm.
just that, we've let social media sort of draw lines in the sand for us with that are not authentic. And this is the same thing with like people who are rabidly Democratic and rabidly Republican, and they defend whoever they're voting for like it's their blood relative. And the reality is, like, you have a lot more in common with people who are in different political parties who live on your street than you have in common with any fool who's sitting in the Capitol building. Like,
Right.
you don't have anything in common with Nancy Pelosi. You guys are nothing alike.
Hmm.
And I think that people in the Libertarian Party need to sort of keep that in perspective too, when there's a lot of like caucus fighting, is that most of us, nearly all of us are fighting for the same thing, which is we want less
Hmm.
government. Some of us
Yep.
want a little bit less than others. I identify as an anarcho-capitalist, but like that argument, like that fight between like limited government and no government is so far away. Like that
Right.
is not a relevant argument for me to be having. The only thing that I care about is making a place for both perspectives in the party, because before I deal with any of that, like we have like the drug war and trillions of dollars in debt and
Mhm.
interventionist foreign policy. Like we got to peel those back a little bit before we start arguing about the Constitution.
Could not agree more. And especially before we start arguing about Articles of Confederation versus Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, I love having those nerd arguments in my
They're fun.
libertarian philosophy clubs, but
Mhm.
you can't knock on someone's door with that. Or like, my least favorite thing is greet someone at a libertarian meetup with that. Hi, I'm new to the Libertarian Party. Oh, welcome. How many Rothbard books have you read? It's like,
Right.
oh, it's so cringe. Like, please dial, like, if we're at that kind of meetup, cool. But like someone who's like brand new to libertarianism,
Mhm.
at my LA County meetups, I actually have point people who I'm like, okay, when a new person walks in the room, it's your job to intercept before the more special members attack these people and like assault them intellectually and run them out of the room. This person's like, I heard of Joe Jorgensen and I wanted to eat chips and salsa, and someone's like screaming about like Virginia political theory versus Austrian economics, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like please
Yeah,
don't do that.
yeah, I almost got ran out of the city party when I first joined, but I stuck it out. And it did not take long. Luckily, they were basically like 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through a massive like leadership shift in the city party and the state party, and so I only had to wait like a month or two before two elections were held, and almost every position had changed, and such awesome people had been elected, and we like took off a little bit, and but when I got there, they had a monthly happy hour at a bar in like on the Upper West Side, and it was just a whole bunch of people criticizing the candidates, including myself and Larry Sharp, and talking about how the only way to win for liberty is by infiltrating the Republican Party. And I'm like, what is this? What did I just
Yeah,
join?
it's so
And then
mortifying.
it's yeah,
I'm
but
embarrassed like that you had that experience.
yeah, luckily that was 2 years ago. And if you show up to any libertarian event in New York City right now, you're much more likely to get the how many Rothbard books have you read, which I think is at least better than are you really a fucking libertarian and not a
It's a
Liberty
step
Republican?
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction to at least not be chasing people off and like
Hmm.
save the like I like to frame it the you're not a real libertarian argument. You
Hmm.
can't have that until you've been a libertarian for a while.
Hmm.
Like don't attack a new person who's a libertarian. Like wait till someone's been a libertarian for 12 years before you start ripping them apart with stupid drama, because now you can take it, you can withstand it. It's your official badge. I
Right.
see people ripping Justin Amash apart on social media, and it's a little cringe. Like I don't agree with everything Amash says. Like
Right.
I just don't. But I also don't think that he's totally absorbed party culture yet.
Mm.
So we should give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, because he just genuinely doesn't know.
Yeah.
Like he was saying that libertarians and anarchists should be, different. Uh, I don't agree with him, but I don't think that he meant it as a personal attack. I think he was
Hmm.
confused. Um,
I
so
yeah.
be
I
generous with people.
Yeah, that one was a gray area. I like completely stayed out of that whole debate because I agreed with what he was getting at, but didn't agree with how he said it, because there is a difference. Like by definition, that libertarianism, I think, spans and includes the majority of anarchists, but it's still a different definition where you guys definitely want to take it a little bit farther than the average libertarian does. And so if you're talking to someone that doesn't really understand either one and they're worried that they mean the same thing, trying to differentiate that is helpful, saying like, no, you're not always voting for an Adam Kokesh, like blow up
Right.
the federal government kind of person. You could vote for a Justin Amash who, is a little bit more minarchist or classical liberal. There's
The average person
variety.
doesn't understand the nuance. I don't ever lead a
Right.
conversation with, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. If I'm talking to other libertarians, okay, but the average person they don't know what I'm talking about. And most people, when they hear anarchist, they're like, are you those guys that threw trash cans through the Starbucks window in Seattle? And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. No, I'm like a Mises Institute nerd. Like I don't jaywalk, when anyone's looking. No, please.
Right.
But I don't expect people to know that, and I don't think that Justin Amash, was totally clued in. So
because if people understood what your brand of anarchy was, you wouldn't be doing it correctly. Because like your whole brand of anarchy is like, go fuck off somewhere else and leave people alone. Like your whole thing is about not throwing what you believe in people's faces. So it hasn't been thrown in many people's faces.
Yeah, I'm pretty chill, until my state is locked down, and then I'm trying to take over the city. But I'm not throwing trash cans through Starbucks windows, which apparently, I don't get any street cred with the LA progressives for that. I should be doing more property destruction to take down something. To take
down anything.
Yeah.
So I do want to give you a chance to talk about what your goals are for your run for LNC chair and kind of how you view the LNC and what you want to be able to do if you win.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I am running for chair of the National Libertarian Party. I announced very early because of the National Party's failure to rebuke the lockdowns. I thought that was really egregious, and a lot of libertarians have agreed with me. Having said that, I do chat with people on the LNC regularly. I am not a hater. I think there are some really good people. I'm just not really happy with the leadership that it's, the direction that it's been going for like several years. And I don't have any personal insults or anything negative to say about Joe Bishop Hinchman. I think he's a perfectly nice person, but I'd like to take things in a different direction, especially with messaging. And for people who think, oh, it's just a Twitter account, it's not that big of a deal, let me put it to you like this. Social media and messaging, things that come in emails, other messaging, press releases, on the rare occasion that the National Party sends them out. So that is the most forward-facing thing that the party has. So for the average person, that's what they look at. And so that's our first impression. And that's why I think that it's very important. Now, on a slightly deeper level, the state parties and the county parties, they interact with national sort of in the same way. We have a little bit more interaction with national, but it is still the first thing that we see. And when state parties go to national, they look at the website, they look at social media, and they see stuff that really turns them off, they're like, oh, that's it. The national party sucks. And then the hard work that people put in that is valuable and that we should be utilizing, like Carshall's candidate training, Apollo Pazell's like Frontier Project, things like that, they get underutilized because people in the state and county levels think, well, national sucks. And then they don't look into it any further. And I think that's like a tragedy because there are good resources at national, but they're not being utilized because of other problems.
Yeah. I had Valerie on the show, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, and talking about the affiliate support fund and what they're trying to do with that. And yeah, they're doing some awesome stuff in the LNC, and like I didn't know about it. That's why I had her on, because I needed to hear about it. And I needed other people to hear about it.
Yeah, no one's heard of it. And so I would like to bridge that disconnect. And I would like to have the state parties we have an LNC, it's set up, but I think that the state party should give some input. So like in LA, okay, so in the city of Los Angeles, we have city council, but LA is huge. So we also have little neighborhood councils, and neighborhood
Mhm.
councils don't have an ultimate say on anything city council does, but we
Right.
give feedback. And I think that we should treat our state chairs a little bit more like that, so that we're actually communicating. We have region reps and they're supposed to work that way too, but for whatever reason, things just don't work like ideally how we would like them to. So we should
Right.
pivot a little bit. I also don't think that we should scrap everything,
Mhm.
because that just creates institutional chaos. And I think that we've seen that sort of happen. Like every time there's been someone try to change chair, or we have a new LNC, then someone's like, well, I'm coming in with all of my ideas and screw all of your old ideas. And that doesn't work. Like,
No.
people don't adopt new ideas like that. They take it personally. People who still are on the LNC from the last cycle, they become resentful. And so I think what we need to do is we need to take advice from people who've been on the LNC for a while. What are your ideas? And then we need to try to implement some of those ideas and use new people and new energy to get it done.
Mhm.
And then you all kind of all work together, and people. Another thing that I think should happen is I think committees should work more autonomously. And while the chair is technically he's like a ex officio, like an unofficial member of every committee, he doesn't need to be micromanaging everything.
Right.
That's not a good way for any chair of any party, national or statewide, to work.
Mhm.
So committees, like, that's boring, blah 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 committee stuff, but it's how the party runs. So committees should be a little bit more proactive, and they should feel like they can actually get more done, and they don't need to seek permission for
Mhm.
what they've already been told they can do. And same with other projects that the LNC funds, like the Frontier Project. Like, oh, have we told everyone in charge of this thing that they can do it? Well, let's not make them ask for funding again. Let's not
Mhm.
make them ask for permission twice. Like, just go and do it. So I want to see people be empowered to really like do the things that they want to do. And I think that that will improve morale and organizational
Mhm.
culture as well.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think the biggest problem with the movement that I've tried to attack personally, like with the limited resources that I have, is like volunteer placement and trying to get
Mhm.
people that want to get engaged somewhere. So I had the misfortune of being a volunteer coordinator on multiple campaigns, and I'm currently the volunteer coordinator for Stacey Pressman's mayoral campaign in New York City. And you know what I see every single campaign, especially with Tulsi's running it nationally. I was her deputy volunteer coordinator, and you know it takes so much work to for each individual campaign to reach out and build a network of volunteers that we just can't do that every single time. And I got the pleasure of working with Yal and getting to kind of learn some of their tactics. I think what they do is brilliant because they have people that are trained, that they know what they're doing, and they just go from campaign to campaign, and they're able to get 150 wins in 1 year out of 300 college students that gave up 3 months of their life to do this. And the LP has more than enough reach to do something similar. I just don't think that the LNC has the time really to do it,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm trying to do it myself. And I have other people that are helping me out with it a little bit, and we're getting off the ground. We're getting campaigns that need volunteers sending in volunteer request forms. We've had people coming to the website to join for a while, so we're finally like having places to put some of these people. I would love to see that take off. I'd love to see somebody with some tech talent do something with it, because I have none. This is like a shitty WordPress form on a website. But hopefully this is a way for us to actually make sure that people get plugged in when they join, like right away,
Yeah.
rather than sitting around in limbo for years until a candidate finally reaches out to them and like, hey, can you blank? And maybe that's the thing that they like to do, and maybe they say yes, and then they get involved finally.
Volunteer onboarding is huge.
Mhm.
So in LA County, I work, with this coalition group on lockdown stuff, and the other person who leads it, who's done an amazing job, is Nathan Fatal
Hmm.
of YAL and Leadership Institute. and we plug people in like immediately. We have calls like twice a week, and it's like we have a group that does this thing, we have a group that does that thing. Like the Mises Caucus for California has a media group. So we started doing interviews with businesses who've been hit by lockdowns, and Nathan will call me up or text me and be like, I have these people who are interested in XYZ projects. What do you want me to do? And I'm like, just give them my phone number or email and tell them to contact me directly. And then there's no lag, we don't have like this long process of, it's got to go through 3 different people.
Right.
He finds who they are. He connects them to me. I have like a 2-minute conversation with them or email exchange, and I just immediately plug them in, because I have other
That's
people,
awesome.
right? Like I have other people that I trust who are running media things and, doing volunteer outreach or restaurant calls. I don't need to screen every person indefinitely. I do a
Right.
short little screen. I pass them off to someone else, and these people have good enough judgment that they know what to do. So then we don't let no one slips through the cracks. It's really great. And that's something that YAL has been really good at. You're right. And National should adopt some of the strategies that they've implemented.
Yeah, I definitely think that we need, because the LNC can't compete with YAL in every way that they operate, just based off of organizational structures and tax law and other bullshit. So, YAL is a conglomeration of, I believe at this point, 6 different organizations. They have a 501c3 that's a non-political, like educational nonprofit, which is actually titled YAL. And they have a whole bunch of sub-organizations that are, PACs and super PACs, hybrid PACs, LLCs that actually work directly with candidates and like contract out. They do everything under this one umbrella. If the LNC tried to do like a quarter of what YAL does, they would be felons pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So
I mean, you got to do it within the legal confines. But as far as volunteer onboarding strategy and communications, that's the sort of stuff that we can take lessons on and improve.
And I definitely think within the next couple of years, we can see a similar organization or conglomerate. People for Liberty is a good example that's existed now for about a year, to kind of do some of the other things that the LNC can't do legally.
Yeah.
And that would be great.
I think one of the things that's really hamstrung the National Party, and pretty much every state party as well, is that we don't have paid positions. So I would like to see us increase fundraising and find new big pocket donors to the point where in the future it is going to be a paid position to be the chair. Do I think I'm going to get that? No. I feel like my hope is that I'll be like the ex-girlfriend who fixed up her boyfriend, and broke up with him because he was still kind of crappy, but then some